Creativity in the Age of COVID with Dr. Judi Bloom and Richard Skipper. It's the only program in which therapy and entertainment come together to show everyone not only how to cope in the age of COVID, but how to be creatively productive through it all. And now, Dr. Judi Bloom and Richard Skipper.
It's Thursday, so it must be creativity in the age of in the age of COVID. I'm still here.
We're here.
I call myself Richard Skipper Celebrate. So I want to ask you, what are you celebrating?
What am I celebrating? I am celebrating life. That's what I'm celebrating. You know, it's we just came through the Jewish New Year and Passover season. It's a time of renewal. It's a time of forgiveness, right? That's one of the primary things that you have to do is forgive not others for anything they may have done to you, but also forgive yourself for anything that you might have done. But it's important to really let people know how sorry you are and be active about that. So I think those are good lessons for all of us to kind of bring with us.
Absolutely, and I'll take those lessons. I want to give a shout out to Feinstein's 54 Below here in New York because I went to see a live show on Sunday night, and their COVID protocols were very much in place, and they checked our vaccine status before we went in. We had to wear a mask to get to our seats. Once we got to our seats, we could take our mask off, and that was fine. And there are partitions between the different seats, so I felt very comfortable there. Amy Spanger, who performed, was absolutely brilliant. So if she's watching, or if any of her friends are watching, she was absolutely brilliant. So kudos to Feinstein's 54 Below and all of the venues in New York. And I do want to, I don't know if you've heard it, if it's made it to national news, but there's a lot of controversy going on right now about the fact that some of the restaurants in New York, maybe it's the same thing in Florida where you are as well, they don't want to be in the position of having to police their customers in terms of checking their vaccines, checking to see if they've got their shots, wearing their mask. But I want to say something about that. As a New Yorker, it's always been, if you go to the Friars Club, for example, I can't just walk into the Friars Club if I am not a member of that club. So going to the Friars Club or most of the private clubs in New York City, I have to show proof that I belong there. Right. And I think that it should be the same way across the boards. If you want to enjoy the fruits of what the arts offer in New York or any other venue, get vaccinated. That's my soapbox for the day.
I couldn't agree more. And, having just gotten back from traveling, as you know, all over Europe and North Africa and other areas, everywhere we went, you had to show your vaccine card or you did not get in, period. Every restaurant, every venue, every museum, didn't matter, everywhere in every country, without that vaccine card, sorry.
Right.
So, America has to grow up a little bit here.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that on the last show, which is available, archived on Richard Skipper Celebrates on YouTube. And I love the fact that you said that these protocols are in place in all these countries, and you traveled throughout Europe. Right. And thank God that they know what they're doing. Yeah. So America, get with the program.
Get with the program, exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit about our guest today, because today we're going to cover not only the performing aspect of creativity in the age of COVID, but the flip side of that, and that is the PR aspect of it. We have our first guest today is Philip Kuruba, who I am thrilled that's here. I've known Philip for years. We've worked together on The Other Realm as PR guys. He is a top-notch PR guy with Richard Hillman PR, which is a boutique PR company in New York. Look them up, one of the best PR companies. They cover cabaret, they cover off-Broadway, they cover regional theater, celebrities, regional events. They cover it all. And I'm thrilled that he's here today. And I want to ask you, Philip, just as I asked Dr. Bloom, what are you celebrating right now?
Well, I have to agree with Dr. Bloom in saying that it's a time to celebrate. A lot of us are vaccinated, which I agree with you. We should be all vaccinated so that we can get over this and move on, so that we can go maskless or whatever your wish is, right? So I agree with Dr. Bloom that it's a time for celebration. It's also, since the theater industry is reopening slowly, it's a great time for renewal. And in celebrating that renewal, I attended my first Broadway show last week, which was Passover at the August Wilson. And it was just wonderful to be sitting in a theater with people and enjoying a live performance. It was really wonderful. And then one of my clients is the York Theater Company, and we just did a special evening with Leroy Reams.
Oh my God, I wish I could have been there.
Oh, he was great. He did his one-person show remembering Jerry Herman. It was just laugh-filled, but the audience, I think he got 3 standing ovations, first of all. Rightfully so, rightfully due. But everyone was just enjoying the evening. It was a time where, you could sit back and just laugh and be entertained. And I really found that to be just so enjoyable, and I found that to be a time of renewal for me. Like, wow, this is great.
Now, Philip, I hope you don't mind me going here for a moment, but not only have you as a press agent been dealing with COVID this past year, but the York Theater, which you just mentioned, went through a major devastating flood.
Correct.
Destroyed most of their memorabilia, scripts, everything. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Leroy's show the other night. You're in a completely new venue. Can you talk about the fortitude of having to get through something like this, and how you, as a press agent, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and truly, going through the muck of having to get through 2 disasters at the same time?
True. Well, dealing with COVID was one thing. Prior to the flood happened in January, right after the new year. And ironically, we were on a Zoom staff meeting, and somebody said, oh, the server just went down. And we were thinking, oh, it's probably an electrical thing. And then come to find out it was really a water main break that happened on Lexington Avenue and flooded the theater. And the York is 3 floors down at the Citicorp building. And, we found out we were probably 1.5 feet underwater. Fortunately, the new seats that were put in weren't affected, but there were things backstage that were covered in mud. Offices were covered in mud. Computer towers were in mud. So all the computers were destroyed. The phone system was destroyed. And then to clean it out, and so that for the remediation part of it, the building management said they had to be out of there really within 24 hours. So it was really, well, how do we pack up 50 years worth of archival information, files and whatever? So they gave them time. We took 3 days. All of the York material is spread out in 3 different storage units around the tri-state area. What I did learn was that they did bring in a company because, as you said, Richard, there were a lot of scripts, files like underwater and on the verge of being destroyed. A company came in and you could freeze dry wet material, and then it would be thawed out and then repaired as needed. And that I found to be a great part of new technology, right? And I'm thinking of all those people.
Freeze dry our lives for just
right. Well, I'm thinking about all those poor people in New Orleans or in the South that were just, inundated with all the water damage. The people here in Queens with the last hurricane that came through. So then we had to get the word out that this happened. And so, it was really getting out the word. There was actually CBS News came and taped some video footage of the water dripping from the ceiling, and getting us packing things up and getting out of there. And then I had them come back again just so that the public would know that we were okay. They came back about a month later and said, well, this is how we are now. This is what, and you could see the walls that were cut down really because they wanted to control the mold, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So the walls were basically being freeze dried too. So it's been a challenge, and then helping to raise some of the money to help offset some of this cost, because it was a city pipe that broke. So then it's the insurance and all that going through, and that takes a while, especially when the city's involved. So we went through a campaign in the spring to help raise money to help off some of this cost of the storage, and to help the York survive a little bit. And it's been pretty successful. And then at the same time, we were keeping ourselves out in the forefront in doing online programming. So we do this series of unseen musicals called Mufti, so where the cast does it with script in hand, and it's just a staged reading that's been not choreographed to some degree, but directed. And so was revisiting all of our popular muftis or popular stage show productions, and staying engaged with the public, and not just once a week. It was 3 times a week, doing Zoom videos with the shows, and doing Zoom videos, which we still are continuing, a series called In the Pipeline, which is looking at new works in development, and talking to new creative writers, and keeping them out there and keeping us out there, like, this is what's happening. And so now we're at the point now where we're getting to come back to live entertainment. And as you said, Richard, we've moved into a temporary new location about 10 blocks north on the east side at St. Jean, in this beautiful, nice little theater space. It's been just interesting to, like all of us, get up on our feet. We've been doing a lot of business remotely, which I don't know if all of you have. I know that you two do it remotely. So everything's been done remotely, which was in itself a big challenge this year.
Yes.
And now to be face to face with somebody in a theater is like, well, God, this is great. Seeing somebody for the first time in a year and a half.
Yeah, I'm wondering on a public relations front, are you having to rebrand your clients in light of COVID?
Yes and no. A lot of, it's really, right now the message is the COVID protocol. We with the event that happened on Monday, we did do checked everyone's IDs, making sure that they were what their status was, and made sure that there was a speech at the curtain to say that you have to keep your masks on, because there was no social distancing in the theater, but as long as you had your mask on, you were fine. So it's really getting that word out. We have a big benefit coming up on November 1st. I'm also working with the Pan Asian Repertory Theater Company, and we're also requiring that everybody prove their status, and then just wearing your masks. And I just think it's respectful. I think, you and I don't know whom you may have been around or what you're carrying. So I think it's just being respectful. I don't, I hear people say, well, I'm a prisoner behind this mask, and, I don't like it either, but, it's just for everyone's safety, really, safety.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got one thought, and then I want to bring on our next guest. But I was talking to someone today, and I think that the big issue that we're all dealing with right now, and I think it's a generational thing. I think that the last 3 generations that are coming along, and I know this is going to sound like a blanket statement, but it's a sense of entitlement. And I think that if people stop thinking about me, and start thinking about our neighbors, this will become a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. I would totally agree with you.
Yeah. What can we do to help our neighbors?
And before we move on, Richard, I have to say, this is so unique and different for me, because you're always conducting interviews for me at events. You're speaking to whomever my celebrities or my cast members might be. So this is kind of different for us, because now I'm, you're interviewing me for a change.
Well, thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to talk about our next guest, because Maria Crisaro, she's got a new show that's going to be opening at Pangea. It's coming up called You Taught My Heart to Sing.
Ooh.
Richard, I just lost your audio.
I think he froze, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, something like that. That's never happened. Oh, the first time for everything,
Well, the top clock is still ticking, so it's live somewhere.
Yeah. I can't hear a word he's saying. And I think it looks like it froze. The screen froze. There we go. We're back.
We're back.
We're waiting for Richard. So Filipino, going back into the theaters and all that, are you finding that a lot has changed with the performers?
Yes and no. I think performers are really excited to be on stage, to be able to do their craft. You know, and I think there's that excitement, there's that joy. You know, it's been a year and a half of really sitting around and, you know, practicing or working on your craft, but it's now a good time, an exciting time where you can do your craft in front of a live audience. So that's been exciting. You know, I think actors really want to be back on stage, and a lot of actors are doing. You know, they're watching their protocols and they're protecting themselves. You know, last year actually we had our new artistic director Jerry McIntyre directed or choreographed a production of Godspell up in the Berkshires, and it was really odd to have production photos come back and have these 6-foot pieces of plexiglass between each performer, because they were like in a little bubble, and they were, you know, doing their scenes and stuff, but it was really odd to have a piece of clear plastic between them, you know. Yes. And now we've moved on from that part because we didn't have a vaccine last summer, so now it's really exciting to be able to really watch people perform on stage.
Right. And Richard, you are back.
I am back.
You are here.
There is, I mean, I'm telling you, there is a storm going on right here in Rockland County, and all of a sudden there was a blip and I was gone.
Uh-oh.
So hold on to me, everyone. But Maria Cruzaro is here. I was saying that she is about to open a show at Pangea, and a circuitous route to get here. Maria, were you planning this show prior to COVID?
Yes.
Yes,
I was. But the wonderful thing, I mean, there's so many wonderful things that happened because of COVID. I mean, you know, I always like to look at the glass half full, and I think that's important. But one of the things for me was that it gave me an extra year to work on the show. And I'm really grateful because I think it's in a really good place right now, and I had the joy of just doing that, just working on the music, working on the storyline, and it was a real joyful experience, you know, because music for me really made all the difference this year, you know.
So where were you in the process as far as COVID is concerned? Were you ready to open? Did you have your dates already planned? Where were you as far as that was all concerned?
I didn't have my dates yet, but I felt like we were at I could open. But now in retrospect, the show was not ready. It's so interesting when you're given extra time to work on something and develop it to a whole nother level. And so I'm grateful for that. I mean, I'm grateful for a lot of things, but that's one of them for sure.
Now, I have to say, the other night, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had a major storm come through New York, major damage, Ida, but Maria actually got caught in this storm. And I am telling you, Maria makes lemonade out of lemons. She just finds a way of turning these things around. Yeah. What's your gift? I want to know.
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know. It's the child in me, I think. You know, I think it's important. I mean, it's nothing that I consciously cultivate. But it's just a place in me that always thinks like, okay, let me figure out how to make this work, or find the good in it, or move forward in a way that perhaps I'm not looking at right now. I mean, it's the child in me. Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, holding on to the child in you sometimes is not a great idea, but I think this particular place for myself, I'm grateful.
Maria, I'm curious. You know, I was looking at your bio, and you're so accomplished. I mean, you became a midwife for 30 years. You teach at Columbia. You've got your doctorate in nursing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, which is a whole different ball game from performing.
Yes.
So how do you marry those two different careers? And do you do both of them simultaneously frequently, or do you put one on hold for a long time? How does that work for you?
Well, I mean, just shortly, I'll tell you the short story is that, my first undergraduate degree was in theater, and I joined a off-Broadway theater company for a few years, and then I switched careers because I didn't really have the fire in the belly at the time to withstand all that rejection that was going to be in front of me. So I changed careers, and I got another bachelor's, I got a master's, I worked as a midwife for 3 decades. And then I was brought into a choir, and sort of the light bulb went off. The fire in the belly started to simmer. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my God, I love this. And that was just like 5 years ago. So it just, so I've taken so many classes and workshops and all this stuff. And it's been pure joy. So now I'm teaching, but I'm also singing. So
right.
Together, yeah.
Your students know that you also sing?
You know what? They don't.
They do now.
Yeah, right. I haven't. In a couple of years past, I did let students know when they were about to graduate. Uh-huh. When I felt like we had this relationship that felt okay for me to then divulge that this is also what I do, and they came to one of my shows, which was nice. But I haven't yet with this new cohort.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a friend that teaches 5th grade in Connecticut, and she was a performer, and she went on to get her teaching degree and moved up to Hartford, as we're in that area. And on the last day, she doesn't tell her students that she was a performer. On the last day of school, she closes the door and swears into secrecy and gets on top of her desk and tap dances.
That's great.
So that's what you need to do on the last.
That's right. On the last day.
Give a little recital.
Yeah.
Every teacher would do that.
I love that.
She swears them to secrecy.
Yeah.
Before I bring Katie on, I want to talk a little bit about your process. Because I know with COVID and everything, did you start working? I know that Sumutsuki is, who has been on this show, brilliant entertainer herself. Mm-hmm. This is her first directorial job. Did you start working through Zoom? How did you begin to work through COVID to get through to where you are right now in the process? And when did you know that you were ready to start going into the studio again?
Well, I started working on the music first with my musical director, Gregory Turian. And we got it to a certain place. And I asked Sue, this was before COVID, if she would consider directing me. And she said yes. So we had a session together, and we worked through Zoom. And then Gregory and I worked through Zoom. And then I would say last summer, there was a process in which, I got tested, and the people that were going to be in my class got tested. And so I felt pretty safe in the studio, in Gregory's studio. So then we began to work together again. So, I really, I have a degree in public health. So I'm on top of public health guidelines. So I felt really comfortable knowing that I was culturing negative, that the people around me were negative, that we wore masks, that I social distanced, and keeping that. I mean, really, social distancing and masking is the majority of how you can prevent infection transmission. So knowing that and believing it and trusting that, I felt good.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, much success to you. All the information, by the way, for your upcoming shows will be in the body of the text on YouTube so that people can get that information. And speaking of our next guest, she also is going to be coming up. She has a new show that's going to be opening also at Pangea, celebrating the Carpenters. Yesterday, once more, as you can see. And here she is, Katie Nieheisel. Thank you, Katie, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone.
Yes, and I want to ask you also, where were you when COVID hit? Were you ready to open your show, or did this come much later as well?
I was not ready to open my show. I had started to work on a show with music of the Carpenters. The reason I did that was because anytime people would hear me sing, no matter what I was singing, I do a few Carpenters. I've always done a couple Carpenters songs, but whatever I was singing after a show, someone would say to me, "Have you ever thought of doing a Carpenters show?" Something about my voice. So I thought that I shouldn't do a Carpenters show. But then it got to the point where so many people had said it, I decided to work on it, but I just did it very slowly with no thought of when I was going to do it, because I didn't know if it would even matter when I did it. That actually changed with COVID, because once this happened and everyone could only communicate through social media, I started to notice that many people on YouTube and Facebook, strangers and people that I knew, including my family members, were posting videos of themselves singing, and often they were Carpenters songs, Rainy Days and Mondays, and some other Carpenters tunes. So that kind of gave me the nudge to contact my director, Lena Koutrakis, and start to work with her over Zoom to see if I could do it sooner rather than later.
And when did you know that, I'm going to ask the same question that I asked Maria. When did you know that it was time to go into the studio? And when did you know that it was time to set the dates to go into Pangea?
To go back in the studio, I actually was in a small pod of people that were going back to the studio, and Maria was one of them. It was because I work with Gregory Toroyan as well. He's my musical director. So I did start going back mainly because Gregory made it really easy for us to feel safe. We had a lot of rules. The size of our classes were cut down. We were spaced apart. We had to wear masks. We had fan in the window. We have a disc around the microphone. We have little spongy microphone covers that we all brought back with us, and we had housekeeping after we sang, where we wiped everything down, including the mic stand and the music stand. I mean, there were just so many rules that everyone followed, and we made it fun. After you sang, housekeeping, and then to get ready for the next person. So everybody felt safe, and it was mainly the same group that was in this little pod. And then that made it easy for me to start working with him more on my own. And it took a little longer to get Lena into a group in person, because Lena actually did get sick with COVID and was very sick. So that took longer, but she's well now. And then once we started working with her, I started thinking that since things were opening up, that this was the time. And I had been at that point spending so much time at Pangea, because Sue and Gregory have this wonderful open mic that's the second Sunday of every month, and started talking with Stephen Shanahan from Pangea, and it just seemed like it would be a good fit there. And I love the room. The space is small, and it's like being in your living room. It has ventilation in the back, and they're taking all precautions, and we're doing that before many other clubs were doing that. So I feel good about that as well.
Now I have a question for you. I saw a posting that Sue's opening this Saturday night.
Yeah.
For anyone who's interested. But you mentioned, she mentioned in a post the other day that they're not really going very heavy in terms of taking a lot of reservations, because they want to be a little open in terms of the seating. How are the clubs going about in terms of taking reservations? If there's an influx of people coming in and there's a crush at the door, are they prepared for this? Or what's the protocol? Do you know how that's being done?
Well, the last I talked to Stephen, I honestly don't know the specific details, but he did say that they were not going to fill to capacity, that they had a number that they were targeting. And then I believe at that point there would be a waiting list. Of course, they are checking for vaccination and all of that. But I'm not sure exactly how they're working that out, but they are not. I don't think at this point that they're going to fill the capacity. That was not the last conversation that I had. And that's fine with me. And I know that, I've had emails from some of my friends saying, I would love to come to your show, but I just don't feel comfortable. And I say, if you don't feel comfortable, don't go. I don't want people to come out if they don't feel comfortable doing so. That's not what this is about for me. The reason I'm doing a live show is I just felt like a show about the Carpenters needs to be a live show. If people want to see the Carpenters, online, they can just look at the Carpenters online. I just feel like this needs to be something live, but it does need to be in a smaller space and a safe space. So that was my plan, and I hope that works out. And I am having Steve Bustamante videotape the first two shows. I'm not sure about live streaming at this point, but he is going to be there to videotape so that I can share that at a later time with people that can't be there. And then again, it's going to be online, but it is a video of a live show. So hopefully it would be a different kind of experience than just doing the show online.
I'm curious about your involvement with philanthropy and how that's played out also during COVID. If you've had challenges in that area.
Oh, absolutely. So on March 13th, I brought a laptop home from where I work, Candid. We collect data on philanthropy and we inform the world about what's going on in philanthropy. We have a database that shows who gives what to whom and why. So that was supposed to be a test. And of course, I never went back. But so immediately that kicked in for us because we do collect data on this on where the money flows when there's like a natural disaster or this unforeseen type disaster or anything going on in the world, like racial equity, things like that. So when COVID hit, we all were working double duty, just trying to collect the data. Also trying to get information to people who needed to access funds and how they would do that. That's not something that I usually do. I collect data from funders to find out where foundations are sending data. But we were really trying to help nonprofits as well as individuals have resources so that they could quickly access monies or where to apply right away. So it was very stressful, and we were just doing it as like a pop-up kind of map and list, and it was an experience, and we learned a lot, what to do and what not to do. But it was an amazing experience. But I don't want to repeat it in that way.
But you what you did was you created service for others, which is
yes,
that's a lovely way to pivot. Again, finding that lemon into lemonade that Maria was talking about. Finding ways to make this okay. Let's see how we can make this okay for everybody.
Yes, that's right. And we made a lot of our services normally are fee based, but at this time we had our database was accessible through connections through public libraries and other resources that people could get online and find the data. And we had a free public map of where the monies were going and all of that. So that was a really great thing because, people just couldn't get to where they normally would go. I mean, we had an actual physical library where a lot of people would actually come to, but that's probably not going to happen again. It's like this has changed things permanently as well. So we'll see where it lands. But in a one way, we did reach out to people that we hadn't before. So it's the same actually in cabaret as in philanthropy. Candid, my where I work, we found a new audience that we hadn't had before. And in cabaret, Maria and I actually did a Valentine's show with Gregory in February that we just put up on YouTube. And it was anybody could just jump in and see the show. And we had, I don't know what it is to date now, like over 1,000 hits. And, there were so many people that know us, like family and friends who live in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, and they never got to see us perform before. And so we were just thrilled with that. And we ended up leaving it up. It's up there right now. On Gregory Toroyan's YouTube channel. So that's a whole new audience. So this brought people in touch, people together.
Make
that
sure
never would have.
You've got the links to your show in the comments section.
I'll do that.
Yes, both of you. Yes. So I want to ask you, I mean, you bring up a very interesting point, and I want to ask you, Philip, I mean, things are changing daily, sometimes hourly. Philip, I mean, beyond the obvious things that are going on, what are some of the biggest changes that you think have changed as far as the world of PR that you think that will remain in the world of PR?
I think that, it's the last year, having the new, I guess, tool of a Zoom. We all complain about Zoom, but that really has connected not only individuals within a community, but I think internationally around the world. Exactly what Katie was saying, you put something on YouTube now, and you would, prior to the pandemic, it would be like, oh, just a certain region would watch what you were doing. But now, it's international, and which I find amazing, that reach. I don't think that will change. I think we've brought in, we've narrowed down the world a little bit. So now everybody knows we have this platform of the internet. So everybody is participating on that. And I find that really exciting in many ways, a great big challenge. For example, the York, we did around Christmas time last year, we did a cabaret series with 5 different individuals, and their cabaret act ran one for 1 week, but it just didn't, it was broadcast on our YouTube, but it wasn't just for York people. It was really for the world. So, somebody in London can watch it. Somebody in LA could watch it at their leisure. It wasn't a specific time. So that I found that a great big asset, a great big challenge, right? Where it's opened up a world to a bigger audience in so many different ways.
And what about you, Maria? Is it changing the way that you're looking at the way that you're approaching your work, or the way that you're getting your work out to a larger audience? I mean, Katie just touched upon this, obviously. You're getting a bigger audience through this Valentine's show that you're doing. With your upcoming show that you have coming up at Pangea, are you going to be live streaming your show at all?
There isn't a plan for that, but I'm open to exploring that for, maybe the show in November or December, so that, because there are people that saw our show, and they've already asked, are you going to do that? Because I really would love to see your show. People who are living in Arizona, California, Colorado, and I would love for them to see the show. And I had an experience where I took a workshop, a jazz vocal workshop for several weeks, where we had students and a teacher from New York and students and a teacher from Holland. And so we actually were in the classroom together on Zoom. It was just amazing. For all the complaints that I have about technology, how it keeps us away from real people, in conversations, it has a place, there's real virtue in it. And this is an example of how it's really been so valuable for us in many ways.
Well, my hope is that it's going to be a bridge instead of a replacement, that there are so many things it can do. I had the good pleasure of interviewing Bonnie Comley with Broadway HD, and with the live streaming of Broadway shows and everything. And when she started this, everyone was saying, don't do it because it will really hurt the Broadway shows. And studies are showing it's helping. I mean, people are coming to New York, and people who have seen these shows streaming want to see it in person.
Oh, great.
So, someone's getting a phone call. It's an agent calling to book us all. So Katie, what about yourself in terms of, you've got this show coming up. You don't know yet whether or not you want to do the live streaming. What are the pluses and minuses that are running through your head in terms of doing a live stream at this point?
Well, I think part of my concern is that I went to another friend's show who advertised her live stream, and people that lived close by did not come. They live streamed. And so there was very few people in the actual audience. So that is a concern. So I think that if I do decide to do it, I'm going to advertise it later than closer to the date. Maybe advertise it to people that I know, first that I know are outside of this area. So, I mean, it's something that I have to think about what the strategy is for that.
If I can make a suggestion, Melissa Errico, her show sold out at Feinstein's 54 Below, and after her show sold out, then she offered extra. I mean, people can go on and buy the tickets now who were not able to get tickets that were going live. So
right.
Encourage people to buy those tickets.
Right. That's a thought as well. So I'm sort of waiting at this point. My first show opens on October 15th is the first date of my show. I have 4 dates. That happens to be Richard Carpenter's 75th birthday, unbelievably. But so I'm sort of waiting till I get a little closer to see what happens there. But I'm thinking about it.
Judi, any comments or anything?
Yeah, no, I think that, taking it one step at a time is a good idea, kind of toe in the water.
Yeah.
Right, and then, as Richard said afterwards, setting a price for people who are viewing you remotely. It's, there's no reason for you to give your work away, right?
Right. I think a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, were starved for entertainment content, and I think that'll still be there. I know a lot of people have pulled themselves away from the TV monitor or your computer monitor, but I think they'll come back again, especially with the fall coming and the winter. So, I like having that alternative or that option. If I can't make it there for whatever reason, then it's great to, stream it somehow. I have access to the program that I want to see, which I like. I think a whole new door has opened up.
Philip, I have a question for you as a publicist. I've always wanted to know, I mean, you have so many projects going on at any given time. How do you compartmentalize? How do you divide these up? I mean, what is a given day like for you? And how are you able to, I know you've got a team of people that are working with you,
right? But
how are you able to give each of these projects equal playing time?
It's a challenge, to be really honest. At any one given time, when before the pandemic, there were probably 5 or 6 projects I was working on at one time. And so it's really making a timeline for myself, setting a plan as like, okay, I can pay attention to Richard today because I have this to do and his first day is coming up. And then just timelining it and just prioritizing what I needed to assess and do for each client. Fortunately, some clients, it was spaced out, if it was a particular show, some of them hit at the same time. I would have like 3 openings in 1 week. And that would be a little challenging. Really, that was a challenge to get, to meet the critics of whatever, and you'd see the same critics for 3 different shows in 1 week, and in 3 different parties, and so it's just really prioritizing and just making a timeline for yourself or for myself as a publicist. Like, this is what I need to do, and this is what I need to get it done. Each day, and each day was a challenge, but it was exciting because each day was different. It wasn't mundane or rote. This is I'm doing the same thing every day. Every day was a different challenge. It all depends on the show and the client.
And I'm sure there must be times where you've got multiple shows opening on the same night.
Yes, that's happened. Actually, the same day. Yes, that's happened. We're 1 in the afternoon and 1 in the evening. Yes. So, and then you're torn and you're split, but you make it working with the team. You can you could have one team member cover one part of an event. So it gets worked out. I usually, if I have a conflict a potential conflict, I'll let the client know, but that this is an issue, and then we'll work it out somehow. If I have I've learned that if I have an opening date on the same day, I'll ask if we can move a date so that it doesn't conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're also, like, especially if it's an opening night and it's a red carpet event, you're asking the same resources you're going to, like yourself. If I have you come to one thing, then I can't have you cover another event if it's at the same time.
Oh,
so
I've done it.
You've done that, I know, but it gets, it's a little tricky and dicey,
Get me across town,
Right. Yep. I'll be there as soon as I can. Right. Right.
Maria, I want to ask you, because you were essentially away from the business for quite a while, and you're making a return to all this, a comeback. But how do you go about, or how did you go about compiling your team, bringing the people together? Because it's all about collaboration. And for somebody who's watching, who's thinking about doing the same thing, how did you go about putting your team together for your upcoming show?
That's a great question. And some things just kind of happen. I went to see a Sumatsuki show at the Magnolia Room in Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
And I was sitting there, and a good friend of mine tapped me on the shoulder and said, "He would be a great pianist for you." And I said, "Who's he?" And she said, "Gregory Troyan." And then I said, "Oh, okay." And then the next day, Kenneth Gartman, who I had worked with in the past and who was the manager there, said, I think you should work with Gregory. I said, "Okay." So I started working with Gregory, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, he's just like such a phenomenal teacher and musician. And then I joined the class there and worked with my bass player, Skip Ward, and the drummer, David Silliman. And it just clicked. It just really clicked. And then I got to know Sue, and I asked her if I could, so I think it's important to know what works. You have to trust this inside that says, this is working. As opposed to,
I'm curious because Sue has not directed before.
I know.
And that's a major trust in her. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Sue's. I love her both as a person and as an artist. But that's a huge trust, to trust in someone who has not done this before. What was in Sue that you entrusted her to take on this project?
Well, I saw her work as a performer. I got to know her as a human being. She's like the kindest, most generous person. And I see how she thinks. She's incredibly organized, and she's got creative vision. So all of those qualities, it just made sense to me that I should ask her if she'd like to direct. And I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. I just kind of went for it. And it's worked out beautifully.
That's great.
Well, like you said, you listen to your instincts, and that's really, really important for all of us. It's important for performers, certainly, to follow their instincts, but everybody, really has to be able to tap into that inner voice and listen to it, and it will generally steer you in the right direction if you really listen.
Yeah, that's true. I was just talking to a couple of family practice residents. Actually, there were like 12 or 13 there. And I was telling them that, and I said, that's hard to teach someone how to do that. But if you just spend time listening, you will understand where that's coming from and to go with it, Yeah.
I have found, I was a performer before I started doing publicity, and I found that having been a performer, it was easy for me to approach an actor that I'm representing, because I knew I was sensitive to how they feel or how an actor works. And I had that, it was just an easy flow for me, as opposed to somebody that hasn't been on the other side of the stage, or the footlights, but on, it just, it helped me having had that experience of having been a performer,
I totally agree with that. I think that every person in this business, I've said early on, when everyone started doing these things, that we have such an appreciation for the lighting people and the sound people for what they do. But But when you walk in someone else's shoes and you realize what they bring to the table, you have such a greater appreciation for what they do.
True. So true.
Katie, I want to ask you, there are, I mean, the body of work and worth, as you know, I just interviewed Rainey Schmidt on his wonderful book on Karen Carpenter. And I just threw myself into her work, and the body of work that she did in her short life. So many songs, and unfortunately, her tragic end overshadows the body of work that she did. And I'm sure that a lot of people focus on that, unfortunately. I wanted to focus on her work, which I know you are doing as well.
Yes.
How do you go about choosing the 15 to 16 songs that you're going to do in an evening to cover the arc of her work? And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but your evening is not about Karen Carpenter or the Carpenters. You're taking their music to tell a story. Am I correct?
Well, it's both. It is about the Carpenters and their legacy in relation to how they've inspired me and what they've meant to me in my life. But it also does cover something about them, just because, you know, they're this sibling duo. Their music was important to me with my siblings. That's how I first started listening to the Carpenters, was on Sundays after church, listening to American Top 40 Countdown, and all of us gathering around and listening to music, and loving the Carpenters, along with my parents also liking that music. I have 9 brothers and sisters. There are 10 of us. So, you know, there's not a lot that we agree on all the time, but we all loved music and listening to all of that. So it's kind of a combination of my story and their story. I'm not mimicking Karen Carpenter, though, in that respect. It's not about her in that way. Gregory's done some really beautiful new arrangements of the material. And so it's not a tribute show in that way. I'm not trying to look like her or dress like her or any of that, like some of the other shows are. But I do want to speak to their life and their relationship as siblings. But choosing the songs, that was really difficult. We went through so many of their songs, so many known, so many unknown. And it was difficult to, we whittled it down to, I believe it's 16. And it's tricky because people have their favorites and they may not be in the show. So it had to fit with what the flow of what we're talking about, and try to get in those big hits, though, that most people would crave. But, you know, you can't please everyone, so you can't really go that route. So, but this is what really helped with hiring Lena as my director, because Gregory and I have been working on these songs now for so long that we're really attached to things that we like and arrangements that we like. But having that fresh eye, someone like Lena, who really is amazing, she can come in and really see in this quickly in this way that's just, you know, with Patter, it's like I can ramble on and tell her a story, and then she's like, okay, this is how I see it. And she can, you know, tell you three sentences that just said what you said, that you were like, wow, okay. And then you turn those 3 sentences into what you would say. You know, it's just, she just can really hone in on what the essence of it is. So I'm just lucky to find her along with Gregory. So I think that I have the right team for what I want to do. And, you know, people will like it or not. It's tricky with something like the Carpenters. Like, some people are just not going to like anyone singing any Carpenters music because they don't think anybody else should sing it. But then it's lost. So, you know, and Richard's arrangements, you know, and his songs, they're beautiful, but why leave them how they are? I mean, they should be carried on and find a new audience, and they should be alive and able to be rearranged, and, you know, I don't know. I think.
Well, I'll tell you what Billie Holiday said about that. Someone once asked her how she felt about someone else singing her songs. She said, "Once I release them, they're no longer my songs.
Mm, mm.
They belong to the world," and I love that. And on that note, we truly are at the end of our show. Anything you want to say, Judi, before I give my closing
Quick question.
remarks?
I'm just wondering, Katie, do you address her anorexia at all during the show?
I don't call it out. I do make reference to that we all know, the tragic ending, but I do want to focus on what she did, like Richard said, in her very short life. I mean, she really started performing when she was 15 or 16, and then she passed at 32. I mean, she did so much in a short period of time that I wanted to keep the focus in that direction and acknowledge that we all know, because I just don't think that I felt like it wasn't my place, even though it had to be acknowledged. It wasn't my place to go further into it.
Mm-hmm.
At least my show. Maybe somebody else's, they would have felt differently. But for me, that's how I felt.
Well, I think a lot of people remember her creativity and that beautiful voice. So,
Oh my God!
We don't. I mean, her death was pretty tragic, and
Yes.
How it came about. But I think just when you hear her voice, it just makes you melt, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's what we should remember, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Anything you want to say, Judi, before I give my closing remarks?
Go for it.
Okay. First of all, I cannot believe that this hour flew by the way it did. I want to thank Philip and Maria and Katie for being here. And thank all of you for being here. You could have been anywhere else for the last hour. I don't take for granted that you could have been anywhere else. So thank you for being here. If this was your first time being here, please subscribe to Richard Skipper Celebrates. Hit the like button if you did indeed like today's show. Leave a comment underneath the video and share this with your friends. Let your friends know about this show. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Dr. Bloom and myself. We do this show for you. So please give us your suggestions, guest suggestions, topic suggestions, people you'd like to see on this show, things you'd like us to talk about. Let us know. Send emails to us. We're here to do this for you. We're here every other Thursday. Let us know. I always end my shows by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything returned. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the fifth name on the list and reach out with a phone call, not an email message, not a text message, a phone call, and let that person know what they mean to you. I don't want to leave on a somber note, but I'm going to go there. Last week, next Thursday, I was scheduled to interview Sarah Dash. And Sarah Dash and I spoke just a few days ago, and we were very excited. I interviewed her last year on September 30th, and she called me up and she said, let's do a repeat on September 30th coming up. And she unfortunately passed away on Monday morning. It was sudden. She went very quickly, and I'm still going to celebrate her next Thursday. I'm going to keep that appointment. Her friends and family are going to join me, and we're going to just talk about what she meant to us. So join us if you can. But I'm saying this not to plug that show, but to tell you life is precious. And live it to the fullest as she did. And love your friends, love each other, take care of each other. This is it. So enjoy. I'm going to leave the screen, and I'm going to give each of you a chance to have a final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to expound upon. I'm going to start with you, Philip, then Maria, then Katie, and Dr. Bloom, you will have the final word. Anything that you want to talk about that we talked about that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to anyone who's watching right now. I thank you all for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Philip?
First of all, I would like to thank Richard for having me on this afternoon. It's been a great pleasure. It's been a great pleasure to meet my other guests here and Dr. Bloom. All I can say is I agree with Richard. Be kind and enjoy life as much as you can. That's what the last year has taught us to do, is to be kind and to enjoy our lives. And that's all I can say. And thank you very much. I very much enjoyed being here today.
Maria?
Oh, I want to thank you as well, Dr. Bloom and Richard, for having me on. And it's just been a fun panel. And I just really want to say that, this time during COVID, for me and for a lot of people, we've discovered what's important in our lives, and not to lose that, to hold on to the things that you want to do and let go of the things that you realize now are not working. And not giving you the joy that we all deserve in this world and in this life. So that's what I would like to say. And I'm going to say goodbye.
All right. And Katie?
Well, thank you also to Richard and to you, Dr. Bloom. This has been a pleasure. I just want to say, this, like Maria said, this has really made us aware of what's important and who's important in our life. And that's really all the people that are in our family, our friends, and the people that we interact with that may just be, the bus driver, the person who gives us coffee, or the security guard as we walk into the building, all these many people that we interact with all day that we sometimes don't even think about, but everybody's become so important. And we see how we're this hive and we all do rely on each other. So I just hope that we have a new normal where everyone is kind and well, and that we can move on to a better place. Yeah. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And yes, this is our new normal, isn't it? And I think that's a really important concept for all of us to grasp, that, right now our major challenge is COVID and climate change. And there will always be challenges, both in terms of the larger society and in terms of our own individual universes. And we have to be able to navigate those. We have to be able to just go forward, rely on our own instincts, our inner strength, and know that we can get through it. And we can get through it with a smile if we just focus on gratitude, on everything we do have that's wonderful in our lives, and treat ourselves and others with kindness. Good night, everyone.